This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast.
Pevara, our favorite red sister, I would say.
Oh, yeah. Pevara is one of my favorite Aes Sedai overall because she is practical and no nonsense in a way that few of them can aspire to be. But she is by far and away the most awesome red.
3 clocks that went far beyond flamboyant. Which I kind of assumed that clocks were pretty commonplace in the White Tower. I didn't really think of them as that flamboyant, right? If you can have one in a village, in an inn in the middle of nowhere, and admittedly it is the pride and town of the village, you should be able to have lots of them in the White Tower.
Well, but she doesn't like this woman and everything about her is flamboyant, so now it all fits into that frame.
Mm-hmm. You're gaudy no matter what, like, because you have possessions.
Yeah, like your choices are gauche. And also, yeah, the whole, like, she's a butcher's daughter, you know, she's working class, looking at a rich woman using shopping therapy or whatever. Like, she's just like, ew, everything. So yeah, Sutama Rat's rooms are just red, 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 red. Every single thing she has is in red. It's a ruby. It's valuable sea folk porcelain. Everything is in red. Ridiculous room.
Red room, red room, red room.
I don't know that reference.
The Shining, like...
Oh, God, no. I hate the memes of The Shining. I do not fuck with that movie. So this is really all about Sutama. This is a massive intro to Sutama through Pevara's perspective. So the room is red. She's beautiful. She's just like danger gorgeous. She's very like Grandal or something, right? Just voluptuous and beautiful hair and like gorgeous clothes and all this stuff. But like, she's not fun. She's not fun at all. And then we get this interesting description of her. We get her backstory through a description of her, right? Because she went into exile.
Yeah.
Back then, she had been hammer hard, yet many had thought her a broken reed when she returned to the tower. Exile had changed her, only not towards softness. Like, there's all this. We're getting filled in on tower backstory, right?
But I feel like we've heard to Sutama's backstory before, right? This idea that wasn't she working at this farm and abused essentially by the farmhand, and she came back a little bit bitter and angry?
You're thinking of Tovann.
Oh, yeah, I am thinking of Tovann.
They were both sent into exile over the same scandal, but these are two different reactions to that exile. Two different ways of changing for 20 years of being thrown under the bus and watching Elaida just waltz away scot-free.
But sort of has similar motivations for similar reasons against Elaida.
One would assume, because of the way we were introduced to Tovann and the fact that Sutama's name literally also starts with a T, I think Robert Jordan is telegraphing, assume the same, but a different personality responded to it.
There's definitely some name salad thrown at us here. There's a couple of single mention Aes Sedai in this chapter.
Pevara and Sutama and a third woman, Javindra, are all sipping tea and talking about news that is books old.
Yeah.
But again,
Dumai's Wells.
Seeing it through a new set of eyes makes it feel fresh and also like a sneaky way to get a bunch of recap in case it's been several years since you picked these books up.
Where's Recappa when you need her?
I know, right? But so there's a bunch of comments in here that made me wonder, is Javindra Black Ajah?
I looked her up. I cannot figure out what her deal is.
Really? There's not a clear answer? I thought you were just going to be like, ta-da, here's a clear answer.
No, there's not. There's a lot of smiles, and maybe I'm missing it, but she is, as far as I can tell, just Elaida bad, not Black bad.
Really?
She's part of Elaida's party that takes Suan into custody, right? So she's definitely part of the coup. So, I mean, that could be Black, but that could just be, like, totally red. She said she placed a red sister in the royal palace in Camelin to keep an eye on Morghese in the fires of heaven. Okay. Then this scene. Those are the 3 scenes we've had with her so far.
Yeah.
She then basically follows Pevara and becomes part of the plan to bond warders.
Oh. And she just gets... So does she get turned in the end? Because that's what most of her party ends up happening.
Let me see.
Everyone in her party, I think, except for her, gets turned or is revealed to be Black Ajah by the fact that they didn't have to get turned. Super Skylight is saying that Javindra is turned at the Black Tower.
Yep, she was turned to the shadow. Yeah.
So that means that she wasn't Black Ajah, because if you're Black Ajah and you get in that situation, you don't need turned. Like, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god. Okay. Okay. So you said she's like Elida bad?
Yeah.
But she's involved in all this shit?
Yeah.
And she had to get turned, so she's not? I think that validates it in a way. Egwene's comment that Elida is too stupid to be recruited to the shadow. If this woman is like Elida but bad and is in the middle of a bunch of plots full of Black Ajah and didn't get recruited, maybe she's just not Black Ajah material.
All right, I've got to read errata. So this is a section on the wiki. The companion states that Javindra was elected sitter after the exile of the 3 red sitters and voted to depose Suan and raise Elida. So she's part of that, right? Pevara also voted to raise Elida. Since Elida was also a sitter at that time, it begs the question of what was Teslin's role in the coup. Teslin is not listed as having voted for the deposition in the companion, although she supported Elida as Amerlin. She is listed, however, as being a sitter for 15 years. The only resolution is either that Javindra only became a sitter after Elida left the hall, or Teslin was temporarily not a sitter at the time of the vote. Either Javindra took Elida's place when Elida, like, maybe she can't vote for herself, so she stepped up to vote for her. There's basically some confusion about who the 3 sitters were at the time.
Well, Elida couldn't have been a sitter because she was the advisor to the Queen of Andor, right? Like, at the time of the coup, isn't she still... Or no, she's been left behind by the time the coup happens. The split with Morghese has happened at that point. So I guess she could have been quickly raised to sitter in that window between getting left behind by Morghese and having... Well, of course she was there because that's how she initiated the coup. Duh.
Mm-hmm.
Coup didn't happen with her at the middle of it while she was in Andor. Duh. Interesting, because everything about Javindra's behavior in this chapter made me think she was Black Ajah, and I just was too lazy to look it up. I am so surprised at this result. Yeah, Elida's not a sitter, Zol. She's been a sitter in her career, but was not a sitter during the coup situation, which makes sense because she only just returned. She'd only just returned from Camelin.
Okay, so then that's an error in the wiki. So then Javindra would be the 3rd sitter.
Okay. So it would have been... Wait, so who were the 3 sitters then?
Javindra, Pevara, and Teslin.
Okay. And none of those are Black Ajah. Are you sure that she's not Black Ajah? How is this not a... Varen, where's your little book?
She was turned. She's not. Like, she's not. I'm sorry. Like,
No,
she wouldn't have been
true.
turned unless she wasn't black.
No, that's unequivocal proof.
Yeah.
All right. Well, she's just a bad, petty bitch, I guess. She just sucks.
She's just the worst of the red.
All right. Well,
Also,
there we have it then.
Is it possible she's also the one who Logain says was in charge of the group that came to him and set him up as a false dragon?
What? Javindra?
Javindra.
No shit. And we believe that even though Swan thinks she planted that as a lie, we believe that it was actually true, right?
He's
kind of what we've headcanoned.
You'd think there'd be denials, right? Why wouldn't the red deny? And how would he know Javindra, right? Like,
and he specifically names Javindra in that.
Logain claims that 6 red Ajah sisters came to him in Casamel and threatened him with death if he did not pose as false dragon. Javindra was their leader, and Baraseen was another. Elida knew about it. So that's his claim.
Okay, but we hear that from Swan.
Right. And Swan could have totally fed him the names.
So I'm wondering, if Swan is fingering a couple of reds she really doesn't like.
Phrasing.
Interesting. Okay, well, I was fully expecting you to just be like, oh, yeah, no, she's black, moving on. This was a journey. Cool, awesome, love this podcast. I guess all of those weird little things she does are just her being petty and small-minded and having no sense of scale to the problems of the world.
I'm shrugging.
Okay, well, there it is.
See here. She was Elida's lapdog, is literally what Pevara thinks about her. That's who she is.
All right.
She's a mini Elida.
Not even worth recruiting to the Black Ajah.
Nope. You know, the other thing I didn't realize is how few sisters there are. We're under 200 sisters in the White Tower right now.
So we shouldn't be complaining about how many we have to memorize.
There's like only slightly more than 20 per Ajah.
So few.
Considering 3 of them are sitters, you're like, at that point, you're like, oh, we have, when the hall gets together, that's like half the population of the White Tower.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
it's
more like a quarter. But
yeah. Well, you know, sitters and leaders of the Ajahs and people in, like, they have all these leadership positions and so few people left.
God, and the entire world is built on like a social hierarchy of figuring out like who's one-upping who. Like, I would do so badly as an Aes Sedai. I'm like, I want to be an Aes Sedai. Like, I mean, I'd be running away to the library like the second I got my shawl. Like,
the brown Ajah is the autistic Ajah. They don't really. That's their heads are in the clouds. They're not really like vying for power. They don't really understand.
Right? They draw the short stick to have to be a sitter.
Exactly.
That's how they elect their sitters. It's like the sea folk going to
totally.
be Aes Sedai.
I just want back to the sea.
Yeah. Oh, then okay. So here's another question about Black Ajah people. Duhara is Black Ajah, though, right? Over a week ago, Duhara had simply taken ship without a word to anyone, and she was a red sitter, the third red sitter of the current hall. And I feel like I remember that name being a Black Ajah name.
She is black, yes.
Okay, cool. So I'm assuming that her vanishing out of the tower is something Black Ajah, but I don't know what. Over a week ago, that's very vague.
Elida sent Duhara to Camelin to be advisor to Elaine.
Oh, and she does show up kind of incognito, doesn't she?
In chapter 31, she arrives in Camelin and demands an audience, offers to serve as an advisor, and Elaine says, "Get the fuck out."
Right. Okay, so that's where she's off to. She is Black Ajah, so that's good.
Good that Elaine tells her to get the fuck out.
Yeah. And then we get into the actual letter that's doing all this recap for us, which is from Sashal, which is one of the healed, stilled sisters from Dumais Wells. And we get the whole...
Healed, stilled, compelled.
Yeah, so we're recapping all of that mental gymnastics and stuff, not just the fact that Dumais Wells happened, but the whole healing of stilling and Rand gathering Varen flavored oddities around him.
Varen flavored.
It tastes like knowledge. Yeah, she recounts Tovane's visit to Kyrian with the other sisters in the Ashaman without knowing about the bonding. So again, we're just layers of recap. But this is also them getting the news that Logain is no longer gentled.
Right.
Like the Red Ajah has put so much effort into that. We've known for books and books that he's good to go. The Tower Aes Sedai are so far behind the curve. But yes, they are now learning that Nynaeve healed Logain. Well, that Logain's been healed by someone.
All the other important people have access to Teleron Riyadh, aka the internet. These people are still living in newspaper times.
Right. To them, the telegraph is like instantaneous. Like, wow, So interesting. I can go to the state capitol and receive a text message.
Oh, yeah, no, that'd be way too fast for them. They're still getting like riders switching horses to deliver messages, right? Like,
yeah,
they're just not acting at the speed. They're learning about Dumais Wells, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
That's 4 months ago.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, so then there's bits of the letter, and then they talk about the letter, and Sutama makes the very cogent remark that Sashal might not know what she's talking about when it comes to Logain, but seems pretty likely that she knows that she's been healed from being stilled. Seems like she would know that about herself.
Way to accept information that goes against your worldview when presented with overwhelming evidence. Overwhelming. Yeah.
Like, good Lord.
But basically, all of this means that she agrees to Pevara's scheme of bonding Ashaman.
Yes, this is what changes her mind about the scheme of bonding Ashaman, is this news from books and books ago.
Also, the assumption that, there's a reference to the cleansing 12 days ago, right? Mentioned what the Forsaken had done 12 days ago, brought a grimace. So much of the power wielded in one place could have been no one else except the dragon. You moron. Like, why is this so hard for them to be like the Forsaken or the dragon?
Right. And they're like, well, this is clearly a bad thing. And it's like, do you see any effects at all? Do you think that the bad guys are going to set off a nuke and have there be no immediate fallout? Does this not suggest that it wasn't the bad guys, whatever it was? But no, nobody thinks like that.
And of course, for them, the main reason to bond men is to have bigger circles, right? How do you deal with a lot of power? You need to be able to generate a lot of power on your own. Let's take that step of bonding men, bring them into our circles, so we have a chance of competing with the amount of energy that was created during the cleansing. Right.
It's a very nuclear arms race, but with magic slavery. Since they're like, okay, we're going to tweak the bond to have control. We're going to leash these men and deploy them like tactical nukes. Like, this is not a partnership. What Pevara builds with Andrel is not at all what is being sketched out here. And then they talk about how they're going to keep it secret from Elida because she is of all Ajahs and none. And this is Ajah business.
Yep.
So the Amerlin gets to stay out of the loop.
And then we get again, "No, Highness," Javindra replied quickly, then buried her face in her cup. Strangely, she seemed to be hiding a smile. What is that? I honestly think it's just Robert Jordan giving us a red herring for a black.
Yeah, there's this other line. The woman argued against nearly anything put forward by anyone save herself. Nearly anything. I'm like, so that's Delana. Mm-hmm. We're getting the clues from Delana, which I think you're right. Total red herring to be like, well, are this woman and Delana on the same team? Are they the same kind of person? Or
it's like you can't depend on that behavior to identify your dark friends.
Yeah.
There's no one way that dark friends act.
Yeah.
And often the way they act looks just like someone who's not a dark friend acting out of selfish or Ajah or loyalty reasons that you just don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. It's frustratingly human, RJ.
Sometimes people just suck. Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that lesson again.
I highly recommend that everyone read Lessons in Chemistry, but one of the lines from that is, "It's not your imagination, most people are horrid," or something like that. And it's just like, oof, I hate how true that lands in me. I also believe, that doesn't have to be your way, like the way things are, but like, yeah. Honestly, though, everyone should go read Lessons in Chemistry. Beautiful, fun book.
Okay.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's just, like, the characters were so engaging. I hated every time I stopped reading it. I was just like, this is great. It's a really good audiobook, too.
Here's where we get the line, "She could not be sure, but she thought fewer than 200 sisters remained in the tower."
Yeah, there's less than 1,000 total, and it's roughly split into thirds, so yeah.
And she says there's less than 20 White Ajah.
Mm-hmm. And they are the smallest, but still.
Or I guess Alviarin mentions that, right? So.
Yes. Yeah, and then in the corridor outside, Javindra muttered something about correspondence and rushed off. I'm like, suspicious! How dare you not want to hang out with this person? But yeah, no, it's just normal shit.
Sometimes that feels like a corporate world, right? There's like very important who you eat lunch with. It's high school all over again.
Ugh. And again, with the Ajahs separated into all but warring camps, fetid tension and antagonism filled the tower, and the mood had infected the servants. Like, yeah, it's just bad. The whole vibes are bad. And then she has this thought that is something we could all use in these trying fucking times. There were too many reasons for weeping to settle on one. Instead, she set about solving what she could. This is why her and Egwene are going to get along great.
Yeah, clean the patch in front of you, right?
Yep. If there's too much in the world to cry about, which there fucking is in January of 2024, my fucking God. Don't cry about it. Do something, anything. Make
a podcast about it.
And hire me to edit it.
Yes. Do you want to get into the interaction with Yukiri? Are we there yet?
First, she thinks about how hard it's going to be to get the Ashaban to agree, which gives us that 51 number and just sets up where that's going. And then, Yukiri, we are having a neat at the tapestry sort of clandestine meeting that RJ likes to have in the tower, which is fun. We get to look at a tapestry while talking clandestine things.
And the talking we get seems to be the progress of the hunt for the Black Ajah, right? And this is new information as far as I can tell. This isn't recap. We don't know about this. Yeah.
Yes. We've switched into not recap
Yay!
for a moment.
So we've got Maris, Thornhill, definitely black. Again, only really, she's mentioned once in the Crossroads of Twilight, right? She's walking with Dorace and Ellen. So that was a book ago.
Okay.
I think she was also mentioned in Leanne sends Pheolane to Maris for punishment in The Dragon Reborn. So, no, random character.
She's been around.
She's been around, but barely mentioned. Talene, obviously, we talked about.
Right.
Otwan?
As in Otwan's Mill, maybe?
Maybe. Probably not, though.
Probably not.
Probably
but
not.
Yes, Otwan.
We see her in Crossroads of Twilight prologue as well, walking down the hall, and then again here.
Okay. And then the next one I see is Karail Sanghir, which I don't recognize that name at all, so I'm assuming she's yet another Aes Sedai.
Only mentioned here.
Hall.
Yep.
Okay.
Single mention here. There's no other reference to her. She doesn't appear in any scene. She's just filling out the heart of Otwan and Maris. And
she has a warder. She has a Darkfriend warder who poisons himself in custody, which maybe is a hint of foreshadowing about Tomas. Darkfriend warders dying by poison away from their Aes Sedai.
Yep, totally possible. But that's it. So it's just, it's again, this is where I kind of said, there's a little bit of name salad. He kind of invents these Black Ajah sisters, just to fill out, like, oh yeah, they're doing something. They're finding Black Ajah left and right? There are these. I think it's important to give us an idea of how many Black sisters there are. This idea that, like, yeah, if you go poking around, you're going to find 3 or 4 new people that you've never heard about who are just black, doing shit that you know nothing about.
Right. This party's just been off doing side quests, picking up knowledge, and discovering that, yeah, like every third person you talk to is a Darkfriend, turns out.
And I like this line. There was always the danger that the hunted would learn of them and become the hunters, invisible hunters for all practical purposes. Hard to say. Just as they now seemed invisible prey. Right? This idea that, like, they're doing fine until they screw up, right? Until somebody finds out that they're hunting Black Ajah. And I think that's why it's so important that Egwene does it all in one fell swoop.
Definitely. And that's what Varen was trying to help out with, is because she was like, I can't do this as a one-woman thing. I need the institutional power of the Amerlin having a bird's eye view of the system. Like, that's the way to take them out. Yeah.
And we're also getting this sort of recap of, like, there's no way that Elida is a Darkfriend because she started the hunt for Darkfriends, right?
Spoilers, by the end of the POV,
you
won't think that anymore.
But that's the whole argument here, is like, there's no way Elida could be a Darkfriend. She started this hunt, and if she wouldn't have started this hunt as a Darkfriend for other Darkfriends, that's dumb.
Right. And so then they talk about the other thing they need to talk about, which is that Talene received an order to appear before the Supreme Council. And that is specifically because Alviarin saw Talene glance at Yukiri and for direction in a meeting with Elida. She caught that unconscious flicker of an eye and is so desperate for anything that she went to Masana, called for help, said there's something going on. Masana gets assaulted by Shadow Huron. Like, all of this is because of that little eye flicker. And because Alviarin is desperate.
And right.
Also, and right. To give her credit, she is right about that eye flicker.
I mean, as much as I hate Alviarin, and she does exactly what she's told to do. She breaks the tower from the inside. She humbles Elida. She serves. Like, there's a reason she gets the mark, because she has been a good, intelligent, quality servant this entire time.
Yeah, and then she gets thrown under the bus like a used Kleenex, because that is what the Dark does. The Dark does not reward you for your loyalty. The Dark is corporate, and if you work above and beyond, you will simply have wage theft and quiet fire.
Listen, the Dark One really only cares about his profits and his stock in, the Dragon Reborn. So he'll lay you off, with a sword the second it benefits his investor class.
Yeah, like, are you a critical member of the team? Yes. Will everything fall apart without you? Yes. Will you get any respect or acknowledgement? No. Like, yeah, it's just corporate.
Not that I have any first-hand personal knowledge of that whatsoever.
I don't, thank goodness. I have no idea, but I hear a lot of people bitching in a lot of different mediums, so I've picked up a couple of trends. I've watched Office Space once or twice. Where are we? We're looking at this tapestry, and Pevara's like, well, these seem very accurate trollocs that were woven into this tapestry.
Mm-hmm.
And then she's like, you know what? We should do a full frontal assault on the Black Ajah. We should just storm their meeting and just take them all out. It'll be fine. There's no way this could possibly go wrong. And Ciane's like, bitch, are you a green? What is happening right now?
Like, listen, Elaine, you need to calm the fuck down. All right?
Right?
Look at the numbers. We're talking like 13 versus 19, assuming they don't have any allies, which of course they're going to have people set up to watch. They're going to have protectors, right? Like,
they're going to have nasty weaves you never thought of because you can't use the power as a weapon. Like, come on.
They could at that, right? Because they can use it against Darkfriends.
Right, but the Darkfriends would have set up weaves that they've never thought of as, like, booby traps, right? Like, you would never think to do that because you have to know someone's a Darkfriend in order to hurt them, whereas the Darkfriends can hurt anyone. So, yeah, it's a ridiculous plan, but she's just feeling cranky.
I gotta wonder if there's ever a situation where, like, and this would be fun to write, an Aes Sedai walks in on two Aes Sedai fighting, sees one hurting the other one, goes, the one hurting the other one must be a Darkfriend, but it turns out the reason she's doing that is the other one's the Darkfriend. Mm-hmm, and so she can violate the three oaths, which isn't violating them, obviously, because she knows that person's a Darkfriend. But, like, basically, if you walk in on Pevara and company doing what they're doing, you would assume they are the Darkfriends.
Right. Yeah, and that erroneous information could lead to you blasting the good guys.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. You could believe that the Darkfriends, then blast them away. And, like, that's one way to use the power against someone who's not a Darkfriend.
Yeah, be convinced that they are a Darkfriend erroneously. Mm-hmm, yeah. Yeah, if only the oaths could be arbiters of truth, then you could use them as a scientific instrument.
Right?
But no, it's all belief-based.
There are magic systems where that is the case, right? There's like Canis Trilogy, which I've talked about many times before. I'm in the middle of rereading. And that magic system very much is like there isn't an arbitrary truth in a lot of ways. And you can use the magic system to test against it.
That's a cool concept to have played with, for sure.
But there's also a magic where you can detect lies, right? And that's different.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's very much more of the Aes Sedai lying aspect of things, is where if you believe it's a lie, it's a lie.
We also see some of the slippery slope nature of the Oath of Obedience here, because she quickly jumps to the idea of, we could just order all of the ferrets to come with us and be our foot soldiers, which is like, oh, no. You can make the argument for national security about the Oath of Obedience for a limited time, but you order people into battle against their will, you have crossed a line.
That's a huge line.
That's how slippy the slope is.
That's not a subtle line. That's bad. That's really bad.
Yeah, and for her to just immediately go there is like, Pevara, babe, you got to reel yourself in. You're getting too close to the edge.
That's Sul'Damrit level of bad, right? Because that's what they're doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So again, she's our favorite red, but she is still a red. And there are some problematic underpinnings to the red view on the world that need to be unpacked. Or maybe it's just that she's real cranky and too old for this shit, which is a different thing.
And Pevara's another one of those characters who Robert Jordan's Pevara and Brandon Sanderson's Pevara are related, but it's not the same character.
Sure, yeah.
And I think Sanderson's is much, much more logical. This Pevara is more emotional, I think, than necessarily she wants to believe.
Yeah, RJ hadn't differentiated her from the other Reds quite as much as Sanderson's does. And I am also very, every time I say the name Pevara, of course, an actual person's face pops into my head, because in the fandom, we have our old tongue expert, Pevara, who is fantastic and lovely. And it makes it really hard to separate her from book Pevara, which is silly because they are not at all related. But I'm just like, nah, she's fine. I did registration desk with her. She's great.
One of the reasons why we've asked people in our Discord not to pick Wheel of Time character names. One, because, then 3 people are Matt Cawthon, and that's very hard to differentiate them. But also just like, I don't want to get confused between the character name of the person I'm interacting with in Discord and the character name in the books.
Yeah. It's like having show goggles in the Grinwell Cup on Twitter. It's just like, you can't do it. It's frustrating. Yeah, this is still Robert Jordan's Pevara for sure. So then they start walking down the hallway, and they talk about the same recap, the same letter that's being sent from all the various sisters who are dealing with the fallout of Dumai's Wells. They've all been sending letters. They've all been getting communications in. And now, finally, that information is pooling together again at the tower.
And we learn in Alviarin's POV, she's the reason why they're all getting those letters.
Yeah.
Like, she orchestrated all of these letters to start coming in at the same time. She wants this. She's trying to undermine Elida because she was kicked out of being keeper. So she's like, I need to expose Elida. This was her threat, right? This is always what she did to keep Elida under her thumb. If you don't do what I say, I'm going to expose your mistakes. Dumai's Wells, the whole thing with the Black Tower and getting these sisters captured. Like, if you get rid of me, I will let that out. Well, she got rid of her, and now Alviarin's spilling the beans.
Right. Knowing it's going to be ineffective. Elida's already gloated that she doesn't care. Like, it's too little too late. But yeah, you're right. That is exactly. Like, because those letters aren't all sent by Darkfriends. But yeah, Alviarin's ability to control the flow of information is pretty vast. It was vaster, but it's still pretty vast. So yeah, they're talking about the timing of when these letters showed up and like what information's being shared, and thinking about like how Ajah business is still a sacrosanct thing you can't ask about, even though we're in this like desperate like espionage struggle for our lives. Like, again, it's a recap, it's character building, but getting to see the same thing from a different perspective again.
So Siain comes running up, right? Basically, with the news that Elida didn't start the hunt for the Black Ajah, she wanted to know how I was getting on with discovering proof that Alviarin entered a treasonous correspondence with the Dragon Reborn. Right? And this goes back to that letter that, remember, Alviarin sent to Rand, where he was like, you have friends in the White Tower, and he's like, I want to know, how's Alviarin? And that there's that whole surprise, like, what? Like,
yep.
That's what Elida was talking about.
Yeah, it's so ironic that actually happened, and these women miss it completely. Like, ironically, the thing that Elida is trying to basically manufacture an excuse, it totally happened, and the women she sent after it completely missed it. I mean, it's like when the DM puts a big shiny thing in the middle of the room, and you spend your entire gaming session talking to an NPC that they put no time into building a backstory for. It's like, oh my god. I mean, if she knew, she would be, face palming with that energy. But yeah, they set themselves up to discover like the root of all evil in the tower, when Elida was just trying to make a mountain out of a molehill at a bureaucratic level. But
now they're on the hunt, right? And so they're not going to stop.
No, they've discovered way too much to go back now. And now Elida's a suspect.
Yes.
Which changes the whole timbre of the board.
But as we all know, the reason why everybody knows what's going on in the Amerlin study isn't because Elida's a Darkfriend, it's because Alviarin's a Darkfriend. Who has the next POV?
Yeah, and they do discover Alviarin is suspicious, like, right at the last minute, I think. They're like, maybe Alviarin was the problem. And then Alviarin's, like, off to her fate. So it's like, well...
Hi, I'm the problem. It's me.
Yeah, right, exactly. Alviarin POV. Let's go. Honestly, this part of her POV where she keeps thinking about how she doesn't want people to see her has always been way too relatable. She's like, oh no, I'm going to go into a hallway where there's going to be people and they're going to see me. I'm going to be perceived. Fuck, I don't want to be perceived. And it's like, I was not marked by the Dark One. I am not an evil agent of chaos. I haven't been touched by literal Satan. I'm just autistic.
Just feels that way.
But yes, funny.
The desire to not be perceived is definitely something I've been more and more realizing affected a good chunk of my life. And still does, right? Like, I don't want it affects how I dress. It affects events I go to. It affects just a lot of things about how I interact with the public. Is like, don't see me. Put up an invisible shield.
Right? Yeah. Has a lot to do with like the path I took through college, my potential career explorations, like, yeah, everything you said and more. It's just like, I don't like when I got glasses, I was so happy because it felt like one level of shield between me and everyone else. Because they're looking at the glasses, not at my eyes. Like,
it's why I like dressing up in a bunny suit at work. I get to wear a hood, glasses, and a face mask when I work every day. Love it. Love it.
There was a time I went in, so I hate the grocery store generally, but there was a time when Brandon's foot was really messed up and I went into the grocery store like fully, like I literally was in sunglasses and a mask because, COVID, and my giant ass headphones. And I was just like, I was so comfortable. And I'm like, I look like a freak. And yet I'm so much more comfortable than when I quote unquote look normal, because it is so much easier for no one can see my eyes and no one can see my mouth and I can't fucking hear anyone. So like I am looking at them through one-way glass. It feels so much safer. I'm like, I look ridiculous, but I feel what is my brain? Why is my brain? Autism. It's autism. It's so weird, though. It's so weird. And being born AFAB and told you're supposed to wear makeup and revealing clothes? No. Do not perceive me. I don't want to draw more attention. Anyway.
So she's more worried about being perceived because she's got that invisible mark of Shadar Haran, right? We saw that scene where he touched the Dark One. The hand of the Dark One touched her, which is just the Dark One touching her, right? Yeah.
She has this like invisible mark which Rand does describe being able to see later. He could see people who are chosen. Padan Fane also has at this point described being able to tell people who are deep in shadow as though there's a sooty mark on their forehead.
And I pretty much assume Murdral as well would be able to see it.
Yes, I would assume that Murdral, broadly speaking, can see it. And probably some other kinds of shadow spawn and stuff, but not all.
Trollocs?
Probably not Trollocs, but I'm thinking like the Zomara and the Golem. Like, and probably not everyone who's ever dabbled, but like people who are a certain amount in,
Certainly anyone who's been literally touched by the hand. Like,
well, I don't think many people
different.
have had that honor.
No, I was going to say, this is very different than anything else most of the Dark. Because first of all, Shadar Haran is new, right? Like, before you had to go to Shale Ghul to be touched by the Dark One. Now the Dark One can come to you.
Oh, Super Skylex pointing out the Shadow Spawn are supposed to be able to see it because it's supposed to be protective. That makes sense. When they raid a town, they can just conveniently leave a certain people alive because they've got the glowy.
And that's what I wonder is, like, do all Trollocs see it, or is it just the Murdral who are saying leave that person alone, right? Like, how...
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Trollocs do see it.
Or is it more... Is seeing it maybe the Trollocs, like, kind of smell it, the Dark One on you, and stay away? Kind of the way they smell the dagger on Matt, right?
Sure,
like
yeah.
Like, it's not necessarily like, ooh, I see that mark, but just like, ooh, that one stinks. I'm not going to eat that one.
Right. Oh, that one's got a funny vibe.
Yeah.
It's got that particular kind of weird sour smell.
Right.
Aged for the Dark One. Yeah, no, that would make sense to me. Yeah, but she's got the strongest, brightest signal ever in terms of this. Like, no one else has been bopped on the snoot. I mean, she got a little snoot boop by the Dark One. No one else has had that on her, as far as I know. Which, again, I really feel like her and Taim would be an excellent male-female pair to enter the Chosen. The part where she is not inducted as a new Chosen feels like a missed opportunity because, like, she's been touched by the hand of the dark. I feel like should be called up to fill out the ranks as they get killed off permanently.
Yeah, her role in the last battle feels very sad to me. Her just like, she get captured in a steading, right? She's part of that group.
Yep, she's just leading one of the bands of the renegade. She's just another dreadlord. I
feel like Alviarin deserved better than that.
Yeah, no, she deserved a Taim level of importance and takeout. She was supposed to be a mini boss, not just some random minion.
Yeah, because there's so many just based on the number of POVs we get with Alviarin, compared to even Taim or Logain, right? We're more POV in her head than we are, like, she is one of our ways to get into the Dark One's head, of the Dark Side's head, right?
Yeah.
So would have loved to see more significant role of her. We got the Sharans as an antagonist to the White Tower, which left a lot of these quote-unquote dreadlords sort of like without... Like, I would have loved to see Alviarin more in charge of the opposition to the White Tower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Instead, she ended up fighting the Black Tower and getting her ass kicked. In
a very, like, anticlimactic, lackluster kind of way. Like,
right.
Yeah. Like you said, it's sad. She's scary. And the part where she's terrified in this POV of what's happening to her, and she's getting in too deep, and the whole Dark One thing is just too much. Like, to have her be such an antagonist and scary, and then to be scared is like, yeah, I wanted more. She deserves better. But yeah, she does not get better. She goes and picks up a message because she's doing her clandestine investigation into Talene. She sees Siain in the hallway. It's interesting. We were just walking with Siain and Pevara in the last POV. Now Siain is walking down the hallway with Farain. And it's clearly we have time jumped to a couple hours or later, right?
I wouldn't even say it's that long. I'd say it's just like...
a period of time later. It's
yeah.
not at the same time because Siain is with a different person here. So it's like not simultaneously. This is a bit later. Or it's a bit earlier. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, well, yeah. And Farain she's the head of the White, right? So this is basically Alviarin being like, I'm encountering all of these White sisters in the White Ajah, and they all are angry at me because I lost the Keeper's Stole. And that was, the White used to have the Keeper's Stole, now I don't.
Yeah. She disgraced the whole Ajah. She let them all down.
But yeah, Farain is supposed to be the head of the White.
Yes.
Which makes me wonder, why is Siain meeting with the head of the White? That's an interesting thought.
Isn't she a sitter? No, she's not a sitter. But I don't know. She's just hanging out with...
just walking. Yeah, they're in the White Hall. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, I mean, they're just doing White Ajah shit, I guess. And then she looks around at the aesthetic of the White Ajah, which is a very stereotypical, like, meditative, soothing environment of simple tapestries, snow-capped mountains, shady forests, stands of bamboo. It's just like, it's the Japanese aesthetic, right? Like, that's what she's describing.
Mm-hmm.
And she like tries to use it to like soothe herself and be meditative. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's such a stereotype. It's just so much 90s energy. Just when he built these Ajahs, they're such 90s stereotypes. And it's cute. And then we get one of the coolest freaking White Ajah sections. I love this part.
I thought you would love this.
Oh my God.
These are two White Ajah sitters. This is the first mention of both of them. Tessain and Estrelle. Estrelle only appears in this scene. Tessain is, basically one of Egwene's around Egwene later on, but it doesn't really do... This is really the only significant conversation for the two of them. They're just like white sister inserts, right? Like without any other real baggage.
Right. That's cool. But yeah, it's White Ajah context. We get to peek into the White, like when the White Ajah's not Alviarin.
Right.
What is the White Ajah doing? And just this description. They were arithmetists of all things, as if logic could be reduced to numbers, and they seemed to be disagreeing on how those numbers were used. And I'm married to a man with a math degree. Like, I know that logic is literally reduced down to numbers, like pages of proofs in ones and zeros. Pages.
Well, and I love this argument between Radham's standard of deviation, which is like, it's an old standard, but it's been proven repeatedly, versus the new standard of Coven's rule of first medians, right? Like, first medians, right? Well, that's not proven, but it's more... if it was true, it would be more accurate, but we can't necessarily... Well, but you're including meat in your calculations, and you shouldn't include meat, because that you need two separate values, one for meat, one for grains. I don't think so that's necessary. Like, I love the scientific argument between the two of them, in terms of like, how do you come up with something that's true?
Yeah, which is like, it's a silly thing to laugh at, ha ha ha, math is so confusing. But in addition to being married to a man with a math degree, one of my grandfathers is very involved in the science of standards. and standardization.
Oh, God.
And is so difficult to follow, but has been on this track my entire life. He's been like this standards guy and has explained little bits and pieces to me. Him and Brandon get along great. You can imagine my grandpa was so happy when I married someone who would actually listen to his like discussions about what is the nature of zero and how do we know how long something is. And what is the nature of a measurement? Define what a measurement is. Like you just keep unpacking it, and it's like the fractals, the Mandelbrot fractal. It just gets bigger and bigger the closer in you get.
At some point, you're like, well, okay, to answer this question, I have to quantize gravity, which no one's been able to do yet. So,
right. We need to understand what came before the Big Bang.
Really...
To make an apple pie, we got to first invent the universe from scratch.
It's so true. It's so true.
Yeah, it's wildly fun stuff how much he was able to pack in of just like that whole end, because like Robert Jordan's super well read, right? He's writing this fantasy book. He doesn't really know how language works, and yet in these little language drift over time, but in this little paragraph he's able to be like, oh no, there's like a whole world of hard science that's been happening under the hood of this world that I built.
He has an engineering degree, physics. But I also like the idea that it's kind of crappy hard science, right? Like the White Ajah does kind of...
an attempt is being made.
Like, I kind of look at these guys and go like, I think these are both maybe more economic and kind of very like these standards and first median. They're trying to look at things that to me are very statistical based, and I'm wondering how accurate their theorems are.
Yeah, well, I mean, I assume that in addition to being, at the age of the Roman Empire when it comes to like writing technology, they're also dealing with unprecedented conditions, right? This is like our climate scientists trying to use the past to gauge what the future's going to be like. It's like, ooh, this is maybe different than you built the model for, so that's not going to really output great results. Like, there's never been a dark one as a factor. They don't even know to put that in as an X factor. But yeah, I would suspect that a lot of their hard science is very much an attempt was made. Cute little 5-year-old drawing on the fridge. Like, not actual hard science as we would understand it. Natural science, like an ancient Greek philosopher. Okay, so where are we at?
Alviarin runs back to her room, shuts the door, and goes, oh my god, that was awful. I just ran the gauntlet of attention.
And then she's also miserable about how she's been beaten once a day by Sylviana. And just, this is laying some groundwork for us to contrast with Egwene and how Egwene handles being beaten on a daily and then multiple times a day basis with no foreseeable end in sight, right? That's what Alviarin's complaining about, is she can't see an end to this. Egwene can't see an end to her beatings either, but she never gets this low, right? This is setting us up to be impressed by Egwene when she reacts how she reacts to being beaten all the time. So yeah, here's her thinking about how she's done her job for the dark, and she's just fingering the spot on her forehead and being anxious, and does her little decoder ring thing.
Yeah, she's got a cipher, kind of the way Varen has a cipher book. I feel like, again, that's foreshadowing for Varen's cipher, right? This idea that, like, you have books that you protect, and then you have a bunch of books that you don't protect as well, but they're encoded. And all you really have to do is protect your cryptography key.
Right, yeah, exactly. And she has a really interesting character trait where she doesn't even know the quality of her furniture because as long as it works, it's a triviality. But good locks are not a triviality. Like, it's just an interesting little insight to her character, like, as a person, outside of being Black Ajah, but just, like, who she is as a person, why she chose the white, like, she's that kind of person.
Lockpicking lawyer here. that's the level. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's a YouTube video.
No.
It's a channel where he's a lawyer, but he breaks into locks as he's a lockpick as a hobby, and he always like breaks it's.
That's fun.
So. And he always talks about the quality of your lock and how, a lock is, really important. But it's really all about deterring somebody for a length of time because every lock is eventually breakable. eventually breakable. Yeah, he shits all over Master Lock, legitimately.
Yeah, rightfully, yeah.
Yeah, rightfully. And yeah, it's fun to watch his YouTube videos and for him to be like, so all I have to do to open this lock is take it and tap it very carefully right here with this pen and boom, thing pops open. And you're like, how does he figure that out?
He's a lawyer and he spends a lot of time fiddling with shit, apparently.
Yes.
But
Alviarin as the lockpicking lawyer just sort of popped into my head, and I thought that would be really funny.
Alviarin's the lockpicking lawyer. Yeah, she thinks about how too many precautions are an impossibility. It's just layers upon layers of protection to hide who she is. Even in the Supreme Council, only 3 people know who she is. Like, she is so clandestine.
So a lot of mechanics about how the Black Ajah is working, right? How she is the Supreme Leader, commands people, how the hearts work, right? How most people in the Black Council don't even know who the Supreme Leader is, which is why she hasn't gotten caught yet by Pevara and her team.
Right. It's a very well-structured system. Very hard to have there be a system-wide failure.
But the thing she's thinking about is the fact that Talene failed to appear, which we just saw in the previous, like, these POVs are all referencing each other, right? Because the reason Talene failed to appear is she got summoned because of the glance. We just talked about all that.
Yeah, and she's been asked to be hidden, to be taken away because she's afraid she'll get executed. And Alviarin is saying, all right, well, if she's not showing up, then that means there is something there. I wasn't wrong. There has to be something there. And yeah, Talene needs executed, but also this means that I'm on to something. That matters more to her than getting rid of Talene, per se. Even though Talene's going to die as part of, reeling her in, obviously.
Sure. But because if she can hand the Dark One a legitimate threat, right? And Talene disappearing feels like a legitimate threat, right?
Well, when she disappears in response to a summons, that's basically accusing someone and having them run away and going, oh, well, you're guilty then, right? It's like that kind of an exchange.
I also think it's interesting here later. She thinks if she had somehow found a way to betray her oaths, ... Alviarin clung to that hope while she commanded a close watch put out on Yukiri and Dosine. And in context, the hope might just be that she's finding something significant to turn over. But I also thought it might be like, if she found a way to betray her oaths. Well, then, Alviarin could betray her oaths and run.
Yeah, I'd never thought of that as a potential, but she is desperate enough that might be what's crossing her mind.
And how do we see, and again, I think this is maybe foreshadowing Varen a little bit, right? Because how did she break her oaths? How is she fleeing? The oath rod. Varen has figured that out. Varen wants the oath rod so she doesn't have to take the poison. But Varen's now figured out 2 ways to break the oaths. Meanwhile, Alviarin here can't even figure out 1.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. I honestly don't think that's what she's looking for, but maybe. She also thinks about how Masana is definitely going to kill her if she's ever slightly vulnerable because she knows what happened to her.
We just saw her humiliated, right? That was when Alviarin got the mark on her forehead, Masana was humiliated.
Right, humiliated seems like an odd choice of word for being brutally assaulted by literal Satan. But sure, we'll call it humiliation.
Because I don't think it was the brutal assault, right? If she was just brutally assaulted, Masana wouldn't have a problem with that. It was the fact that she was brutally assaulted and couldn't fight back and had to submit. I think it's the submission that's the humiliation.
But she didn't see the submission. Like,
Yeah.
I find the rape as punishment trope a little tired when it gets paired with humiliation.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels a little like, I think she's going to kill you because she can't kill Shadow Huron and she wants to kill someone.
Yes.
I don't think she's going to kill you to hide her humiliation. I mean, she even says it here, like, no woman would let that pass. And I'm like, so women don't, like, talk to each other about this stuff? Like, all women are going to murder each other for knowing about trauma? Like, Robert, what are you saying?
Well, okay. First of all, that is her POV about all, like,
Yes.
She thinks all women are like her.
Sure.
That's not Robert saying all women are like that. That's Alviarin making a general assumption that everybody is like me.
Right, but why is Alviarin even like that? Like, that, it just seems so unbelievable to me that a person would be like that.
In the dark, any it's very important to maintain a image of power and being in control. Your image is more important than what you actually do.
That is a very Aes Sedai way of looking at the world, plus Darkfriend way of looking at the world. I'd make a terrible Aes Sedai, and I'd make a terrible Darkfriend.
Yes, you would. Yeah. You're way too honest. Way too honest.
No, okay, yeah, though. That's fair.
Aradia, I don't understand why these people are lying, being evil to each other. What's wrong with them?
Yeah, that's fair criticism.
You're having a little trouble getting the head of a Darkfriend, are you?
A little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
I would never.
No, you wouldn't. You're also not a psychopath. And a lot of these CEOs and black Darkfriends and people who are willing to go to any end for their own gain, irrespective of what it does to anybody around them, exist.
Yeah. I am over empathetic rather than under empathetic.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
You might argue that one of the things that makes you a Darkfriend is your lack of empathy.
Sure. Selfishness and a lack of empathy are deeply entwined facets of choice making. Aw, Zoal. And Vance. I'm glad you'd make a bad Darkfriend. Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. For sure. It's good to be friends with people who would be bad Darkfriends. This is a great litmus test. Let's see. Oh, so we get the clue here. So she looks at the messages, and the messages basically say also that Yukiri and Doacine are going to be hard to kidnap because they sleep in rooms that are warded. And that's just a general precaution, but I also just love that their generalized paranoia is actively staving off kidnapping at times. That like there are women looking into kidnapping them and going, the barriers are so high, that's going to be a problem. Like, they would have gotten kidnapped if they'd been casual. Their paranoia is actively saving them.
This is why I have a problem with Moiraine Duran in Book 1 being like, I'll get you to the White Tower where you'll be safe.
Right.
Really, Moiraine? Really, Moiraine? You know better. You
know
better.
Your sister's better than that.
That's almost a big enough lie that I'm like, wait, is Moiraine a Darkfriend?
She's just delusional.
Yeah. She just believes in the White Tower a little too well.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, she grinds up the messages into incomprehensible ash. She burns them and then grinds the ashes like no one will ever read this. And then she sits down to write responses to order bringing Talene back, basically. And again, she's just sitting there being like, "Oh, I got beat once a day and it's gonna last this way forever." Contrast that with how Egwene handles being beaten every other hour by the end. Trying to chase those thoughts away, she dipped a good steel-nibbed pen and began to write out ciphered orders on thin sheets of paper. Talene must be found and brought back, of course, for punishment and execution if she had simply panicked, and if not, if she had somehow found a way to betray her oaths. Alviarin clung to that hope while she commanded a close watch put on Yukiri and Doacine. A way had to be found to take them, and if they were caught up in chance and imagination, something could still be manufactured from what they said. She would guide the flows in the circle. Something could be made. She wrote furiously, unaware that her free hand had risen to her forehead, searching for the mark.
All right, I'm going to tangent a little bit here. All right, so you know how you hear we always live in four-dimensional world, right? Like through the three.
Yes, I read The Time Traveler, The Time Machine.
Yeah. So you got your three dimensions, and then time.
Yes.
Right. And I was thinking about that, and I'm like, that's just wrong. Because we only experience one direction of time, which is positive time. We don't experience negative time. And you hear that all the time. It's like, oh, we travel in, all three dimensions, plus we go forward in time. Realistically, you should count forward in time as one direction and backwards in time as another direction. which means you should count up as a direction and down as a different direction. So we live in a 7-dimensional world. Up, down, left, right, backwards, forwards, and forwards in time.
Sure. Yeah.
So I don't like the idea that we live in a 4-dimensional world. I think that's wrong. It should be 7 dimensions. Sorry, that's my White Ajah philosophical thinking. I was like, I don't like it's 6 dimensions, not 3. We have 6 dimensions of space.
Sure, right. Denying the negative axes just because of where you want the origin point to be for your cube is like, but you're just denying reality, bruh. Mm-hmm. No, I like that. That makes sense, even if it has no practical application to changing how one moves through the world. I like that. That's very high of you, sir.
That unless you include negative time, and you can't. And then we're talking about 3.5 dimensions. Well, we don't have half dimensions.
Yeah. God. Being able to understand the shift between dimensions does definitely make you feel like 4 is feeling a little not complete. There's just this feeling of, but wait, can't we keep going?
Mm-hmm. Well, and then, of course, then you can start talking about string theory and, balled up dimensions that are small enough that we can't even see them. I mean, none of that's been proven, though, because string theory isn't proven. There's a lot of math around it. Right. And people invent 10, 11, 12, usually up to, I think, 17 dimensions is one I've seen. But because none of that's been proven, it's all just theoretical at this point. We're trying to create an agreement between quantum gravity and gravity and quantum physics with quantum gravity.
Grand unified theory, the only holy grail I actually care about.
Which we're no closer to finding than we were when I was a kid.
Yeah, no, we're better at articulating what we haven't found yet. I've definitely read some cool books that, like, I've seen their ideas become more talked about. So we're getting a better handle on describing the huge question mark we have. But yeah, it's no more filled in than ever before. We keep ruling shit out, though, which is fun.
Yes, we keep saying, "Oh no, that other theory doesn't work either." Anyway,
it's very, very fun, and then you can get into like cosmology. No, it's great. But we should get back to we should talk about it.
What is an observer anyway?
Yeah, describe being in a place at a time.
Yeah, well, people are talking about James Webb Space Telescope and how it's messing with our understanding of the universe, which is the whole point. Like, we're getting new data, right? And so all of a sudden, we had this sort of set of existing data from Hubble, which changed our worldview. But we were limited by the visual spectrum, right? Because the further back in time you go, the more red-shifted the light gets. And so all of a sudden, the James Webb Space Telescope is looking further back in time, and we're finding out information that it doesn't necessarily contradict what we already know, but it makes some of our models incorrect.
Yeah, it's blowing the doors off of some potentials and slamming them shut on others. Going, oh, no, you were wrong about this particular piece of your hypothesis, which is, like you said in chat, exactly why we sent it up. We had a bunch of models, a bunch of hypotheses, and it was all hinging on, but if we had different data, then this would be different. So let's build a telescope that's specifically, because it's science, right? Science is all about testability. So we built a test, and glory of glories, we are getting a fuck ton of new information and being forced to revise our models and our hypotheses. It's like, yes, this is a good use of my taxpayer dollars.
We're also in a point in time where the data coming back is still being analyzed on lots. Cool. And so scientists are disagreeing. There's things out there. It's like, oh, this is changing everything we know about science. Is it? And then sometimes people are going back and be like, no, they just didn't account for the hydrogen in the atmosphere or whatever. There's all sorts of, or
looking at you, Neptune.
Yeah, Neptune. Or with these early galaxies, we're sort of assuming a homogeneous distribution of matter, right? That's one of the assumptions when we look at early galaxies. And we're finding out that's not necessarily true. And especially in the early galaxies, when things are so much closer together before expansion really took place, you kind of have to account for the fact that things aren't homogeneously distributed.
Right. And I remember, because I got really into space science a while back, all these early models about early galaxies all assumed very specific, limited. Oh, they're not going to have complex structures. They're not going to have spirals. They're not going to have bars. I remember doing
And it's all there.
I remember doing a citizen science project collecting images of really faint galaxies out of images, so that way, you know, stuff like James Webb Space Telescope would know where to look. And yeah, to see all these things coming up being like, oh, no, there's very complex galaxies at the very edge of what James Webb can see.
Which is the very beginning of the very beginning of the universe, right?
It's exactly, like, it's looking back as far as we thought we could ever look, and we're seeing way more complex galaxies than we ever thought. And it's just
Definitely.
like,
Wait, how? Yeah.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And yeah, like you said, we haven't even finished processing all the data that we've collected from other programs. Like, the era of big data is still waiting for full AI crunchitude. But yeah, James Webb we are still at the being fire hosed stage, in terms of, like, people are setting up for careers worth of crunching through the data we've already got from James Webb. It's a delightful time to be interested in space science. Completely unrelated to what's happening here, though.
Very unrelated to what's happening.
Yes, we are recording on the same day as when we recorded with Abby.
Shh, don't tell them that.
Okay. It was going to be a lead into telling them about the ice storm.
No, go ahead.
So we're recording this technically on the same day as we recorded with Abby, but the episodes are coming out separately because I'm playing catch up. Because as some of you may know, I got completely decimated by an ice storm last week and was unable to record. And I just want to bring this up because I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners were impacted by it. This was a massive regional disaster. Like, I mean, the whole ass country got hit with a cold wave. So this disaster was one of many across the country. Like, winter storms this last week were really intense. But what we had out here was extra unique, even for us. Like, we had an ice storm here. Ice coated everything, right? Just the trees are absolutely coated. The deck is a sheet of ice. Last year, we had, or it was the year before, I don't remember, we had twice as heavy of ice coating. Didn't have anywhere near this kind of event. Like, the amount of ice did not seem to correspond to the amount of trees that fell. But
you know why? Because most of our trees fell, at least here, before the ice. Because we had 2 days of intense wind that took down all of the most vulnerable trees before the ice hit. And that took down all the power lines. Like, the storm moving in was crazier than the ice for us, at least. But then, of course, you're out of power when the ice hits.
Yeah, no, for us, it was definitely ice and wind together. And then it was like well into everything being icy that suddenly one night the trees just start falling. And they just kept falling for hours, just every few seconds. Crackle, boom, crack, boom, 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 crack, crack, just like constantly. And like every now and then you could feel one through the floor. Like, it was just like, oh, it's bad. The power went out in the afternoon.
Can you imagine in the Borderlands where the sap explodes because it gets so cold?
Oh my God,
similar experience, right? This trees falling and exploding.
Yeah, but like it was dominoing, right? So I live around really steep hills, and we went out after all the power went out and after all this storm, we waited for a day, and then we went out, and we literally couldn't get more than a mile down the road in either direction before we got stopped by trees. Like, literally not more than a mile in either direction. And this one slope, it looks like it was a landslide. But if you examine it, it's not a landslide. It's
a tree slide.
So many trees that, like, they did. So what's called tree throw. We're going to get a little geology lesson here. So there's a couple of different ways that rock gets broken apart. And one of them is tree throw, which is exactly what it sounds like, right? A tree falls over and the root ball rips up a whole bunch of rocks and dirt. But this slope is like 89 degrees. And I'm not exaggerating that much. It's virtually vertical. Like, I don't know how they ever managed to log the old growth off of it. They haven't logged it in a very long time. These are big old trees. And there's no dirt. The only dirt that exists is the dirt that the tree is holding down. That is it. Like, there is 3 inches of dirt and a bunch of tree roots, and it just spreads out and it clings to the rock. So if it falls, it's bringing literally all the dirt with it. right? Like the entire area of the tree is now bare rock that's only a few inches below the apparent soil level. And then it goes and hits another tree on the way down, and it just dominoes. And every one of those trees is ripping up its root mass because they're all massive old trees. So the slope has been massively denuded of soil. And it's just like bare rock in a bunch of places in a way that looks like a landslide. But it's like, this is so many trees. It's like you said, it's a tree slide. It's bonkers. And we drove to town eventually, and it was the amount of destruction. Just every other power pole was knocked out, it seemed. And the power company said in their Facebook communications that they've never had to replace that many poles before. They're like, just guys, this is going to take us a while because replacing poles is a lot of brute force and technical work. And we've never had this many poles needing to be replaced. So like, please be patient. Like it was wild. Truly fantastic. I did post a picture of the amount of ice accumulation in chat off of like just a chunk of a tree that fell. We were totally fine. Our generator didn't work despite getting winterized, but we
know why?
Spark plug.
Ah.
Somehow between here and there, the spark plug got completely fucked. But, we had friends and family that pulled through. Our wood stove is not ideal for cooking on because the top is decorative and uneven, but it melts cheese. So, we
Can you boil some water on there?
We muddled through. We had a propane stove outside, and then the ice made it cold enough that for the first 4 days, we just drug the freezer outside and filled a cooler up with all the stuff from the fridge and just put it all outside because it was like 21 degrees for days. So, we were cozy and fine and safe. Took a while to get internet figured out. But yeah, all that to say, just timestamp that massive winter storm that we all experienced to some degree or other. That was my time during it. And that's why last week's recording was very short and why this week's recording might not be so long because we just split the content up to make it fit.
My experience was different, but similar. Like I got iced in, couldn't go anywhere. Trees down all over the place. But, in the city, I was lucky. I never lost power. So I just basically stayed in my apartment and we ate every bit of food that we had in the pantries because it was we couldn't get trash. We couldn't get food. We really couldn't. Timber had trouble stepping out of our back door to go to the bathroom. He had trouble standing up on all 4 feet for the 30 seconds it takes him to pee. That the ice was insane. We couldn't open our back gate. It was ice shut. Our cars couldn't move. And there was no plowing. There was no infrastructure. Nothing was done to make it better. And it's just it's ice thick enough that you can hit it with a hammer and it just laughs at you. There's no snow. It's not snow. It's freezing ice.
Yeah, and then we got to see a bunch of I forget what it's called, like ghost ice or filament ice, like coming up from the ground and like building up these stacks as it was for days and days, right? And it looked like these like mushrooms with little like dirt hats on top, and then these puddles. It was just like it was a sheet of ice, but then all the water had drained out from under it, so you stepped on it and it crunched like cellophane down into empty space.
I love those. Those are fun.
The winter wonderland was real. Slightly dangerous. Like we hiked up the hill under some trees, like to get to some internet, like just some cell service, and I got hit by a piece of tree on the way down. Just a little chunk, like marble sized, but it came down and hit my foot, and I'm like, is that a sign that we shouldn't go up there?
Yes.
But
trees are potential energy of death, right? Like that's a lot of weight really high up, held up by nothing but the tree.
Yeah, it's trees are amazing feats of engineering when you watch them sway in the wind and hold all this ice, and then when you watch them fall, you're like, wait, all that was being held up by that? Oh.
Sharks are older than trees.
Oh my God, it's so true. Trees are cool. Trees are insane. Yeah, so that's my little catch up, my little explanation for what's going on. I hope everyone else was safe. There was definitely deaths throughout the country.
Certainly here in Portland.
From the storm. There was a very national attention-grabbing story from Portland that was really, really sad about why ice is a fuckface that you should never trust and electricity is super dangerous. And yeah, that happened. And so I hope all of our listeners were safe and cozy in whatever capacity they were throughout that storm. And with that, should we get into these POVs?
Well, I've discovered that if we do 2 episodes in a day, I still tangent hard on that second episode. Very hard to stay focused.
Yeah, we did tangent.
Good luck editing Aradia with all of that.
Thank you. But also, publishing Aradia thanks you for powering through, so that way we can catch up our backlog that extra episode.
Definitely.
I have so many hats.
Yeah, and thank you to everybody who showed up live and sat through that doubleheader. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, you guys have been great, helpful, and encouraging, and just fantastic, as per usual. Thank you all for joining us. Remember, you can always go to our show notes for links to our couple of affiliates that we've got. We've got Querencia and the Ono Rollers as affiliate links there. And someday soon, there's going to be a website where you can check out all the podcasts that Fox and Raven Media are producing, as well as inquire about getting me to produce your podcast. Support us on Patreon, follow us on social media. Think peaceful thoughts and think twice before hitting send on that tweet. That's my advice to everyone today.
And join us next time as we finish up the prologue.
Yeah, I hope everyone's winter is going well.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?